In today's video, I'm going to show you a couple of the tricks I've learned in order to become a better photographer and filmmaker. And I do this through my editing. So let me show you what I'm doing. There's a saying that I really like, which is, if you want to understand how much you know about something, teach it. And as I was editing this video, I started to do something different, which is to put in place markers when I was editing of what I wanted to focus on to learn. And I realized that I learned so much in doing this with just a few little tweaks here and there. I wanted to share with you what that method was. So let me point that out as we go through this video. Now, bear in mind that I'm editing this video as we go along. What I've done is simply wanted to show you how this works for me. I learned so much by doing this that I wanted to share this with you. Maybe you're already doing something like this, but for me, it gave me a real insight into what I was going to focus on during my next filming, because I actually got to see and understand exactly what I've been trying to accomplish, and whether it worked or not on this last film shoot when I went out to the Western Desert, or it didn't. Either way, I wasn't judging it good and bad. I was simply wanting to understand at a more visceral level what I was trying to accomplish. And this method that I'm going to show you helped me do that. So hopefully it's helpful for you. So let's get started. So I went out to the Western Desert and camped for one night. I set up my camera as I wanted to practice doing a time exposure at sunset. I had done one in Goblin Valley, and while I liked it, it didn't come out near as good as this one here. Here you'll see I set the exposure so it didn't change and flicker, and I think it came out really well. You can see in the lower right hand corner maybe a little bit of light painting I tried to do with my iPhone flashlight, but it didn't really work. Now here's Goblin Valley, and I didn't set the exposure on this. I just let the camera compensate for the changing lighting conditions. In the first clip I used my Canon 90D. In this clip it's my Hero 5 Black that I used, and I think you can see quite a difference in the quality, not just in terms of the quality of the image, but more so that when you see the light flicker, it is very distracting to my eye. So that was one of the things I could really pinpoint here. Now you'll see titles in the footage throughout, and that's where I put place markers so I could pinpoint those areas that I want to concentrate on. In this clip, what struck me was how much better my handheld panning is with my iPhone. That was one of the things that I've been learning, and I wanted to see how it worked out here, and I'm really impressed with how much it has improved. It's nice and steady, it's a good pace, so everything comes into focus. Again here, I was practicing my handheld panning with my iPhone. Before, it's been usually pretty shaky, and I would pan too fast and it didn't allow the camera to focus on the subject. But here I think it came out really well, again, just being handheld. Notice how the horizon line stays steady in the frame. That to me was very important. Later that morning, I moved over to the eastern side of Nevada, just at the Utah border. I had seen this mountain range in the back on Google Earth, and I wanted to explore it. Unfortunately, I could only go within 3/4 of a mile before I was stopped by some obstacles. So I decided to fly my drone and practice that. As you'll see here, the drone stops for a moment because I needed to readjust my camera. And basically that's what happened here, because I hadn't practiced enough, but it gave me a good idea of how long I was stuck. But here I start to fly again, and I've got a nice elevation and I've got a nice smooth pan. It's much better than last time I flew my drone, where I actually crashed it, and that's this sequence right here. But if you'd seen the Goblin Valley footage, you'll see my drone flying's pretty erratic and jerky. I'm not happy with it, although it was only about the 6th time I'd ever flown a drone. So while I hadn't set the exposure on my camera on my drone, I was impressed with how much my drone flying improved. The horizon staying level in the shot, It's moving nice and slow and steady, so the focus on the camera is working well, and it gives the viewer plenty of time to see the incredible scenery here. Now, there are two places where the camera crosses across the sun and you get those sun flares. I find those very distracting, and it was simply because I didn't set the exposure manually on my drone's camera. But that's how I learn. So when the exposure changes, I find that very distracting, and I think it has a negative impact in the viewing. Now here you'll see that there's a truck coming down in the center of the frame, and I had no idea that this truck was being filmed. I had heard it when I was flying my drone, but at this point I got a high wind warning on my drone video, and I knew that I needed to come in. So as I'm coming back and I'm lowering the drone, interestingly enough, serendipitously, this truck is staying in frame, and I had no idea, even though I was constantly looking at my phone and viewing the footage. And here it's just like it had been choreographed, pretty amazing. And I find that happens quite often when I shoot something and then go back and edit it on a bigger screen. Something wonderful has also happened. Now here I was simply practicing panning handheld with my iPhone. This is something that I really wanted to get down and be good at, because so many times a shot will come along, I just grab my phone and I want to be shooting. But you can see here that I'm moving the phone too fast and it's not allowing the camera to focus. So it's very poor quality, I would say, and it's distracting. Before heading home, I decided to stop one more time back in Utah and capture the sunset. I wanted to practice pushing in and pulling back with a foreground element. Now here you see the camera refocused itself. I think it would have been better if I had set the focus, but I like the fact that it's a pretty smooth push in and pretty smooth pullbacks. There's a YouTube channel called Learn Online Video, and that's where I've learned a lot about this handheld filming. But I think it's worked out pretty well. It's pretty smooth. I would have liked to have remembered to set the focus on one object and not have the camera automatically change the focus. But other than that, I think it worked out pretty well. I'm very happy with it. I think that it looks good. It's smooth. It's got nice contrast in terms of what's in the foreground and what's behind. And then I just took some shots because the sunset was so beautiful. So I wanted to practice flying my drone one more time before heading home. I flew it for about 5 minutes and then I got a high wind warning again. So I had to quit early. But I like the takeoff. I've got a forward movement. I'm gaining elevation, and I'm also turning to the left, and I think that works really well. So I like this sequence. I think it's nice and smooth. I think the image in the frame looks really good, and then I get a high wind warning, and I know that I need to land, but I wanted to capture a little bit more, hoping that the gust wouldn't be too strong. So I'm reversing here and coming in to show where I'm at. And I think it looks really nice. I think it's a nice smooth transition. The gimbal's turned down. But then you'll see as I go to land, I hit a spot where I need to readjust and there's a delay. And one thing I realize is that I don't understand how long these delays are while I'm readjusting until I look at footage, and then I realize that it's been longer than I had suspected. So as I come into land here, the gimbal movement as I go to land is not very smooth, and that's one of the things I need to practice. But other than that, I'm really happy with both shots that I have of the drone on this trip and my photography all the way around. Well, I hope you found this video informative and educational, and given you some ideas how you too might be able to do things a little differently to become a better filmmaker or photographer. Or you've just found it entertaining. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate this community. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be glad to answer them. And until next time, keep on following your dreams. Bye for now.